Hello everyone, this is Andrew at Crown Academy of English. Today we are doing an English lesson all about the use and meaning of the word still. So still is an adjective, and it can also be an adverb. So let's look at still as an adjective. So the meaning is something that is not moving. Something that stays in the same position. So let's look at some examples. Please be still while I take your photograph. So the lady is saying to the man, please be still. And that means please don't move. Okay? Those children never stay still. Those children never stay still. So this means that they are always moving. And the third example, the water in the lake is very still. The water in the lake is very still. So when water is still, it means it is calm, that there are no waves. Okay? We can also say the same for air. If we say the air is still, it means that there is no wind. Okay? So still as an adjective. Oh, there's another example with still as an adjective. There's an expression. Still drink. And this is a drink that is not fizzy. So it is a drink without gas, without bubbles. Example. Mark says, would you like a Coke? And Jane replies, no, I would prefer a still drink, please. I would prefer a still drink. So, example, orange juice is an example of a still drink. Also, water is a still drink. Okay? Still as an adverb. We use still to indicate and emphasize that something is continuing. So that an action is continuing. So it is a situation that has not finished. And perhaps we are surprised. Okay? Perhaps we are surprised. Example. Monday. On Monday, Mark asks, how are you feeling? And Jane replies, I have a cold. Okay, so here she is, she has a cold. Now, on Wednesday, Mark visits Jane again and he asks the same question. How are you feeling? And Jane replies, I still have a cold. I still have a cold. Okay? So this means that Jane is saying, I continue to have a cold. Okay? The situation has not changed. She knows that Mark already knows she has a cold, and so she says still to emphasize the fact that it is continuing. Okay? Let's look at the position of still in a sentence. The sentence has, if the sentence has a main verb, then the position of still is before the main verb. Example. I still call my parents every week. I still call my parents every week. So this is the main verb, call, and so we put still before it, immediately before it. If the sentence has an auxiliary verb or a modal verb, then the position of still is after the modal verb or after the first auxiliary verb. Example: she's still waiting for the train. She's still waiting for the train. So this is the auxiliary verb. It's the verb to be, which is acting as an auxiliary verb. And waiting is the main verb. So we put still in the middle. It's after the auxiliary verb, but before the main verb. Okay? And finally, if the sentence has the verb to be as a main verb, the verb be as a main verb, then the position of still is after the verb be. Let's look at an example. Mark asks, "Have you changed jobs?" And Jane replies, "No, I am still a teacher. I am still a teacher." So this time we have the verb to be, but it is not an auxiliary verb here. It is a main verb. Therefore, we put still after the verb be. I am still a teacher. Okay, I have not changed. It has not changed. I am still a teacher. Let's look at the opposite meaning of still. Let's look at an example situation. Example, in year 2012, I'm living in London. Okay, so this is what I say in year 2012. I'm living in London. In 2014, I'm still living in London. I'm still living in London. So this means that I continue to live in London. Okay? Now, in 2016, I leave London and I move to Manchester. Okay? So how can I express this? So this is the opposite of I'm still living in London. Well, the opposite meaning of still is, we can say no longer, not any longer, not anymore. So let's look at some examples. We can say, in 2016, we can say, I'm no longer living in London. Or, I'm not living in London any longer. Or, I'm not living in London anymore. Okay? So these three sentences, the meaning is exactly the same. And the meaning is the opposite of I'm still living in London. So this is the affirmative. Okay, so this means I continue to live in London. And the opposite of this is I'm no longer living in London, or I'm not living in London any longer, or I'm not living in London anymore. Okay? Still with negatives in the present perfect. We often use still with negative sentences in the present perfect. It's a very common structure. And the meaning is to describe a situation that perhaps should have happened, but it has not happened. Example: I still haven't found a job. I still haven't found a job. So this means that I've been looking for a job for a long time, and I should have found a job by now. Perhaps I'm getting impatient. Okay, so still, the word still, it emphasizes the fact that the situation, a certain situation has not occurred, has not happened. and it's perhaps been a long time. We are getting maybe frustrated. The position in the sentence is after the subject and before have. So after the subject I and before have. So I still haven't found a job. Let's look at some more examples of the same structure. So Jane still hasn't called me. Jane still hasn't called me. So this means I've been waiting for her to call, and perhaps we're concerned. Why doesn't she call? I'm getting impatient. She should have called. An accountant says the customer still hasn't paid the invoice. So the accountant is still waiting for the payment. And so this implies that he should have already paid it. The customer should already have paid for it. And maybe the payment was due last week. So the word still emphasizes the fact that we are waiting, that there is a delay, that it's taking time. Something should have happened, but it hasn't happened. Okay? Still compared to yet. Well, remember that we use still to describe a continuing situation. Example, Mark and David still play video games together. So this means that they continue to play video games together. But we do not use yet. We do not use yet to describe a continuing situation. Mark and David yet play video games together. No, that is wrong. So let's look at another example of comparing still and yet. So Mark asks, is Jane still living in New York? So what does this mean? What does this question mean? Well, the question means that I know she was living in New York because you told me last time we spoke. But does she continue to live there? Okay, so this is the meaning of this question. And David replies, yes, she's still living there. She loves it. So yes, she continues to live there. Now, look at this question. Is Jane living in New York yet? Is Jane living in New York yet? Now, this sentence, this question is grammatically correct. Okay, this is a correct question, but the meaning is very, very different to this. The meaning is different. So this means, I know she wanted to live in New York because you told me last time we spoke. But has she moved there? Has she gone there? So David replies, no, she's going to move there next year. So this is the big difference between yet and still. Okay, so there we are. That's the end of the lesson. Hope you enjoyed it. And here are some other videos which you might be interested in.